I do. Creator and sustainer of all things and all people, you are the source of all wisdom and light. Enlighten our minds to receive your guidance so that you may lead us into true vision. May all that we say and do in the services of this county, whether an elected member or as officer, be in accordance with your will and for the good of your people. Amen. Thank you very much. Evacuation procedure. In the event of having to evacuate the council chamber, would everyone leave by one of the two exits at the rear of the chamber, please? Officers will be on hand to assist with any people who require help. Mobile phones. May I ask and remind myself to who have mobile phones with them to ensure they are switched off so they will not disturb the meeting. Right, well, I think it looks like that. Good. Agenda item 1, Chairman's announcements. The county service. As a final reminder, I'll be hosting the county service this Sunday, the 1st of October, at St Mary de Castro Church in the middle of Leicester. All members have been invited, and I do hope a number of you will be able to come. Remembrance. On Friday the 10th of November, I, along with the Lord Lieutenant and the leader, will be leading the County Council's tributes at the annual Remembrance Service at Stand Easy. As you will recall, at the last meeting I mentioned Armed Forces Week, which acknowledged all those serving in the armed forces. But it is equally important to reflect and remember all those people who have gave their lives to our country. I therefore hope as many members as possible will be able to join us. Leicestershire County Cricket Club. I'm sure members will join me in congratulating Leicestershire County Cricket Club for winning their first one-day final for 38 years. I can't believe it's that long. They beat Hampshire by 2 runs, literally. It was literally the last hit of the over, and Hampshire could have won, to lift the Metro Bank one-day cup at Trent Bridge after wicketkeeper Harry Swindles had marked his first appearance in this season's competition with a magnificent unbeaten 117, his first century in limited overs cricket. And I like to remember this particular point because on the 15th of August, that team played Essex Eagles at my own village at Kibworth Cricket Club as one of the bits towards getting towards the final. So, and that went very well. We had a great day. So that was nice to have that happen, but particularly for the County Cricket Club to get another final under their belt, so to speak. Agenda items 2, minutes. I move that the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 5th of July 2023, copies of which have been circulated to members, be taken as read, confirmed and signed. Mr Orson, can you second?
Yeah, please second, Mr Chairman.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. I invite members who wish to do so to make declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda for the meeting. Are there any such declarations? That's lovely, thanks very much. None. Agenda item number 4, questions asked under Standing Order 7, 1, 2 and 5. The questions and replies set out in the order taken will be taken as read and entered in the minutes. I have received note of supplementary questions from Mr Hunt for your 2 and Mr Mullaney. So we move on to the first, which would be Mr Hunt's rather. It's question B, isn't it? So, Mr Hunt, your supplementary, please.
Thank you, Chair. These are questions about the local transport plan, the one that is current. Would the lead member not agree that the consequence of the impact of housing growth has been congestion and is quoted as being congestion in Cabinet papers? That's on number 1.
Is that point 1 of question B?
That's a supplementary question on question 1.
Yep.
On question 2, shall I ask them all together?
Is this for the B question or for...
Yeah, B1, B2, B3 and B4.
Yeah, fine. Yep, carry on.
Carry on.
I'm sure Ozzy is writing it all down. Yep.
So if Mr O'Shea can remember that one?
Yes,
I'll go
quite.
to the second one.
These are points of clarification, I hope,
These
the
are
answers.
points of clarification, and I've asked here to name some demand-responsive interventions, despite those, what significant improvements to public transport have mitigated housing growth. Because we talk about public transport being able to carry our house owner or new house owners around mitigating the transport effects. So where are the examples? The third one, I've asked what active demand managements have been looked into, because that's what the local transport plan says you should be doing, and you haven't. And the fourth one is, do you intend to make a similar offer in the next transport plan? To which I'd say, can we believe anything you say in LTP4 if you haven't done what you're doing, what you said you'd do in LTP3, Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Mr. O'Shea, are you
Absolutely, Chair.
able to answer those three
I
supplementaries?
will reply to Mr. Hunt in writing for
Okay.
all his questions, and thank you for following up with your supplementaries.
And I think, try and look at the other one. We've got another one somewhere. Yes. So next one, I think, is Mr. Mullaney. Your question D, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yep. About
Thank
bus
you.
services.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. O'Shea, for your response. I do continue to be contacted by residents who live in the Tudor Road area of Hinckley about the fact they have to now travel fairly substantial distances to get alternative bus services to the 1 and 2, when many of them are elderly and disabled residents. So I would really ask again the council to think again about looking to see if there is any way that an alternative 1 and 2 bus service could be restored with an alternative provider and support from the county. Thank you.
Mr. O'Shea?
Thank you. I did reply on our position on the 1 and 2, but as a favour to you, I will look into it and see if I can get you a written response again. Thank you.
And Mr. Hunt, I think you've got a couple supplementary for question F?
Well, I'd just like to say what helpful answers they are, because not all the answers that we get from the opposition, particularly, are all that helpful. But these are exceptionally helpful, and thank you very much. And they're positive.
So he hasn't got supplementary.
Thank you, Chairman. So I won't read the entire thing out. I've just got some abridged notes. So obviously trading standards do an excellent job at the airport. We've seized almost 440,000 potentially dangerous and non-compliant items worth 15.5 million in the last year. Most of the items were destined for sale at large online marketplaces where they were sold on behalf of the importer. We do work nationally with the nationally funded project in partnership with Border Force. I hope you've seen the video of Nicola Gardner, who was Deborah's guest today at lunch, examining a consignment of unsafe goods and demonstrating the vital work that trading services carry out in this area. I mean, trading services, as an aside, are a small department in the great scheme of things at County Hall. They used to be under my wing at one time, and now Deborah does them. But in Gary Connors and his team there, we've got an excellent little service. And really, if we could ever fund it better, it'd be really, really good. And thanks to Nicola for doing it. She's not a person who would normally want to do things like this, but she said she was comfortable doing it because she was speaking honestly about something she knew a lot about. So I went over and spoke to her at lunch with Deborah today and thanked her very much, because apparently it's one of the best little clips we've done on YouTube, whatever it is.
TikTok.
On TikTok that we've ever done. So I'm not sure if she's here today, but Chief, if you could pass on our thanks to Nicola for doing the work. As Chairman of the Fire and Rescue Authority, I just want to report to you that we did send 2 officers to Morocco as part of the UK ISAR team, and I thank them very much for going. Both are highly trained in this work. both work in the city as it happens, and I think we should welcome their involvement and commitment in rescuing people in what was a pretty horrific and deeply troubling natural disaster. And I did say to the Chief Officer, we need to make sure that their mental well-being is okay now they're back, because some of the things they've experienced out there were pretty poor. As Chairman of Bradgate Park and Trust, along with Deborah, who's the local member, I just want to tell you we've been recognised as a Green Heritage Site and secured a Green Flag Award for the second year running. We've also used the Active Travel grant to get an electric cargo bike to enable rangers and volunteers to carry out tasks around the park. This bike will replace some of the Trust diesel vehicles. And Bradgate Park goes from strength to strength. I think the new manager stroke director we've got there, James Diamond, is a really, really good guy. And I only ever get letters, apart from the odd complaint in Deborah's area about bad parking, but generally I get mostly compliments and praise about Bradgate Park and how us and the city run it together as a trust for the benefit of the people of Leicester and Leicestershire. Devolution, just to remind members that in May I told you we met Deanna Davidson, who was then Levelling Up Minister. She wrote to myself and SPS and the leader of Rutland asking us to pursue a level 3 deal with the government. As you know, level 3 isn't available to us because we cannot find agreement on a directly elected mayor. So the next best thing that we can agree is a level 2 deal. So myself, SPS and the leader of Rutland have now signed up and written in to the new minister, I forget what his name is now, but Deanna, as you know, has resigned. She's not standing against a shame because we were getting on well with her. But you have to respect her decision. So we are now in for a level 2 deal. We'll wait to see if the Levelling Up white paper ever makes ascension in Parliament. I'm told it could be late November, but who knows? And then if it gets assent in Parliament, we wait to see what's in it. And we'll just have to KBO with what's on offer. But as I've been told by all the Conservative MPs in Leicestershire, plus the one Maverick in North West Leicestershire, plus the odd Labour MP in conversation, get your foot in the door. If we're not in the door with some sort of devolution deal, we'll never get anything anyway. So anything anywhere. So although it's described as thin gruel, in my view it's better than no gruel at all, and at least we've made a start. But we await the Levelling Up white paper, and it won't be easy, I don't think, even for the government with a majority of 60, because there's some things which will be in there which I think will be fairly controversial on planning, but we are in and we'll see where we go. Again, on a ministerial visit, following our meeting with the Chancellor, we were offered Lee Rowley, who's a DLUC minister. He came up to meet us here in County Hall. Luckily for me, Peter Bedford knows him, Robert Ashman knows him. So when we met, I met with Deborah, Peter Bedford and Robert Ashman. He came up as a minister, did the ministerial stuff, and then we had a political meeting. So it was actually kind of positive, and if I'm honest, he was a really good guy, and hopefully with our contacts with him, we may be allowed to bid for some other bits and bobs, if I'm honest. Maybe something might appear in an autumn statement. It's all maybes, perhaps, and hopefullys, but it's always useful to meet with a minister. As I said, he was a nice guy, and it was lucky that Peter and Robert knew him. On the MTFS, which Lee will probably speak about, we're overspent, unfortunately, 9 million. Mainly Deborah's team in children's social care and Christine's in adult social care. That's where the real demands and real pressures are, and it is really difficult for us as a party. We committed to defending and protecting the vulnerable. It's getting harder and harder to do, because if you protect the vulnerable adults and children's budget, give them the money they want, there's very little left at the end to make any savings from. It is incredibly difficult, but we will maintain that commitment throughout the term of this administration. So we're lowest funded, but we also need to remember and tell people more that we are super efficient. So apart from us being low funded, and although the annual statistics of efficiency have been taken away from us, we are still, when we analyse ourselves through John's efficiency team, we're still 1 or 2 in the league of the most efficient councils in the country. So remember, when we tell people that we're poorly funded, we can't fill their potholes, clean their signs or whatever, we are still doing our absolute best. We are efficient and we pride ourselves on doing the best we can with the money we've got, despite the escalating costs in adults and children. Going forward, as an administration, I say this as much to my own side as you guys over there, we will have to make some politically very, very difficult decisions, because we will not ever, while I'm leader and this administration is in charge, be a Birmingham or be a Northampton. It would be appalling if we ever got to there. So there will be tough decisions to make in February and the following year. On RAC, you've seen a briefing note circulated. We've only got one Academy Trust which has got some RAC, and they put in measures to deal with RAC. And one thing I don't like to praise Rosemary when she's here, but if you've seen Rosemary's new weekly digest, which is on Sway, I think it's really, really good. I'm not saying Mo didn't do it, but I thank Rosemary for now doing it, because I think it's useful for us all, because you know, we're all politicians, and it does give you stuff to put out there to tell you what the county council is doing. So thanks for doing that, Rosemary. It's gone down well. On the electric vehicle charging points, we secured more than 3 million from the government to install electric vehicle charge points across Leicestershire. We'll use the funding in 24-25 to deliver up to 2,500 public charge points by the end of 2030. It's nowhere near enough, really, if everybody's aspirational to drive an electric car. I mean, I've got an electric car, as you know, and so have other people. You generally charge at home. But if you live on a street, and I live on a street, but luckily I own a car park nearby with my own chargers in it. But if you live on a street, you will have to rely on these public car charging points. So we do need a lot more. 2,500 sounds a lot, but it's by 2030. And if you think there's millions of cars, a million cars on the roads of Leicestershire, and probably 200,000 or 300,000 haven't got gardens, we need a lot more of them. But at least we've made a start. And then finally, just a plug for Caseworker Gov software. Odd members did it. Deborah led for us on it. Graham Wardle's been super helpful with it. So I think it's good software. And if you want it, get in contact with Graham. Get yourself on the training for it, which is taking place very soon. So I think it'll be very, very useful for you in your day-to-day work as a county councillor. That concludes, Chairman.
Thank you, Leader. I now invite members to speak. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and I will then call you to speak. I will then invite Mrs Hack and then Mr Mullaney to speak last before the Leader's right to reply. Lee, Mr Brecon.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to add to what the Leader's outlined in his statement regarding the MTFS, it's an inescapable truth that high inflation makes the country and our county poorer. Locally, the money available to spend on services will not go as far as it did last year, and this will be the case next year as well until inflation settles back down. None of us take pleasure in seeing other authorities fail around the country, but it does vindicate our approach to managing the council's finances as being the right one by the prudent approach that we have taken in managing its finances and in planning, shaping and taking the tough decisions that others have avoided. As a council, we need to keep adapting our ways of working to keep the impact on residents as small as possible, but as a council, we must be open-minded to change. The autumn statement on the 22nd of November will give us a clear indication of the challenge we're facing us. We should learn how the Chancellor will prioritise the bit of headroom that he has, possibly, and we will find out the increase in the national living wage, which drives many of our costs as a county council forward. We need to keep on being efficient through effective leadership and also prudent management, and we plan to do just that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Brecon. Mr Smith.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and thank the Leader for the update on RAC. It's great news and very reassuring to all parents that our schools in Leicestershire are safe spaces for our children to learn. And to that note, I was very disappointed with a recent press release by the Labour Group leader on the subject, which can only be described as political scaremongering. Perhaps in future, before writing any press releases, you maybe not copy and paste central party lines and speak to children and families so that we actually get the correct information that we can pass on and do the job that we're all elected for in Leicestershire. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. I feel that amongst all the papers we've got, the one item that we should be discussing in depth is the MTFS update report that the Cabinet had. And that is very concerning reading. The word dire is used in just about every report that comes through from our financial officers. I think the emphasis that the leaders put on children and adult services is well placed, because that is the service that is most in need of protection. And ironically, it's the services which have been partly created through the years of austerity that local government itself has suffered most. I think this is probably the new normal, listening to my leader and the possible next Prime Minister. Things aren't going to get much better in local government. And we have to cut our coat according to our cloth, but that is exceedingly difficult after saying that for so many years. I know what we should have done a few years ago, which was to do what John Lewis would do and cut down a few of our branches and move to a unitary authority, and that would have been saving something like 10 to 30 million a year. But we didn't have the courage to do that. And in another sense, the leader talks about making tough decisions. And the one area where you're not making tough decisions is on transport, where you're keeping those capital projects going because you won't look at alternatives. And even the capital projects that you're doing on transport, at great expense to council taxpayers and the council, will not reduce the amount of congestion and so on that we're suffering in the county. Other than that, there's a league table. Unfortunately, we're not yet at the bottom of the league table. But, think of Leicester City.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Mrs. Newton.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'd like to also thank Nick. Nick asked me to stand in for him at a long-term service award for firefighters last Friday, and it was an absolutely wonderful event held at Bow Manor Hall. One of the nicest things for me was seeing a young boy that went to school with my children and was one of the ones that came back from Morocco, so that meant a lot, seeing him as well. But it's not the first time the firefighters of this authority have been abroad. They've done that. They go out to disaster areas. The smallest one, probably in the country, actually punches above its weight in terms of what it delivers for not just us, but internationally as well. So I just wanted to sort of emphasise how proud I am, and I'm sure Nick is, of all of the work that they do. And it was lovely, as I said, seeing a number of them dressed up in their best last Friday at the Service Award. And thanks again, Nick, for letting me do that in your place. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Newton. Mr. Charlesworth.
Thank you, Chair. It's just on devolution, please. It's quite unequivocal in the statement that the level 3 is unacceptable to the City Mayor, but nothing stays the same forever. And should there be a change of leadership or change of heart in the city, could happen, can the residents have an assurance that the leader will support a level 3 bid?
Thanks, Mr. Charlesworth. Mr. King.
Thank you, Chair. So I've got a couple of points I wanted to raise with the leader. So first of all, I'd like to thank the leader for his update about devolution. And as I've said before, it's incredibly disappointing that we're not getting a level 3 because of the roadblock by the City Mayor. But obviously, I suppose something's better than nothing. But obviously, wait to see what that comes to fruition. The second thing I wanted to ask about was just about the update on the finances. So based on all the known knowns, to quote an infamous phrase, can the leader reassure us that he and the senior team are not anticipating any issuance of a Section 114 notice by the County Council anytime soon? I'd just like that reassurance. And finally, Chairman, I'd just like to thank county officers for all their support and information in ensuring that the new primary school in Market Harborough, the first primary school in nearly 25 years in my division, has started construction very recently and is due to open in time for the autumn term in 2014. So I'd just like to thank, on the record, the officers and everyone who's been involved in ensuring a very tight timescale has been delivered on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. No one else has indicated, so will now be allowing the opposition group leaders to speak and won't be taking any more speakers, therefore. So, Mrs. Hack.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you to the leader for raising the excellent work from Trading Standards. I had the opportunity to meet with some colleagues at Trading Standards at a local event, and certainly they were telling me about the work they've been doing, stopping counterfeit goods coming into Leicestershire and beyond. So that's really positive work. So if you can pass my thanks on to them, I'd be very grateful. Great to see that Bradgate Park, a jewel in Leicestershire, to get the prestigious Green Flag Award, and great to see the e-trikes and Ozzy on the picture with his trike in the local press when that was pushed out. Clearly on devolution, the important element of devolution is the legislation going through Parliament in November. I think that, you know, at the moment we are going through with no legislation, so the fact that we can go for a level 2, which, you know, it wouldn't be our choice if that was something that I was in control of, but we at level 2 is what we have, and I think the important thing is getting more resources into Leicestershire. Ministerial visits, we've had quite a few of those, haven't we? And unfortunately, we don't seem to be getting over the line in terms of getting more cash into Leicestershire. The position the county finds itself in financially, though, is something that clearly is in this government's gift. The cuts that we've experienced as a local authority have been significant. And I'm really pleased that the monies that we do have are well managed, but that really is problematic when the leader indicates it's the best we can do with the money that we have. And I think, you know, it's important that we do the best with that money. But there's is a grim reality. It is dire. The financial position is not getting no better. And trashing the economy last year hasn't done us any favours either. So in terms of our risk and looking at the cuts that we continue to make to services, it's a really disappointing situation for Leicestershire. In terms of school buildings and county council buildings, I'm really disappointed to hear Councillor Smith's view of scaremongering. Let's not forget RAC was on the Daily News at 6 o'clock, 10 o'clock every day for 2 weeks. So indicating that parents should be worried about the quality of our school buildings certainly isn't in my hands. I think that my concern had always been around school buildings, though, is the impact of long-term cuts to maintenance to schools, and that has been having an issue. We know there are still asbestos in school buildings, and I'm pleased to see that RAC hasn't been using construction in Leicestershire buildings bar one. But I think we should all be concerned about public buildings and making sure that they're in the best quality they can be. But I'm very pleased that we only have one building affected by RAC. I think we need to make sure, though, that our school buildings are in great condition, and I know our maintained schools are done, but we need to keep going and making sure our public buildings are safe. Electric vehicle charge points in my own community, in Braunton, in my division. I'm really pleased that we've managed to now install 4 EV charging points in our community centre, in our car park. Obviously not our personal car park, like the leader with his personal car park, but car park nonetheless available for public use. And it wasn't, Leader didn't mention the caseworker software, but as one of those participants that's trialled it, I'd really encourage my council colleagues to get involved and get on board with caseworker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hack. Mr. Mullaney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So obviously I will join in congratulating Trading Standards for their good work, and congratulations to Bradgate Park on their awards, the Green Flag Award. I know that in Hinckley, Hollycroft Park and Argentsmead have been given Green Flag Awards, and I know that it's a very high standard to achieve that. Caseworker, I'd encourage members who haven't yet to use Caseworker. It's a very useful system for managing casework, and thank you to the officers who've helped with the launch of that. EV points, obviously we need more of them. It's good that there's some that are coming, even if not sufficient for what we need. I know that in Hinckley and Bosworth Borough we are putting EV points into a number of car parks, so obviously hopefully there'll be cooperation between LCC and HBBC and other boroughs about where their EV points are going in. RAC, obviously there's concerns about RAC. Obviously it's good that there isn't any authority maintained schools affected, though concerning that there is one academy affected, and obviously it's an issue that people are completely free to raise, because it is an issue of concern to many people. Devolution. Now, you know, I think the whole point of devolution is it's about devolving decision making and allowing people to have less prescriptive approaches. So whilst it's disappointing that the mayor isn't being more cooperative, it would have also been helpful if perhaps the government was more relaxed about the approach that it took to being eligible for level 3 funding, because as a very badly funded authority, as we know, we really do need all the support we can have, and so it is disappointing that the government isn't going to be more flexible in terms of its approach to devolution in allowing us the possibility of access to level 3 funding and only having access to level 2 funding, which whilst it's something, is still obviously not enough. In terms of the MTFS and the fair funding situation, you know, we are still the worst funded authority. People know that, in terms of the fact that we haven't been able to support numerous bus services that have been lost, that the many roads and pavements that we report in our areas that need resurfacing, there isn't the money for those. The hundreds of other things that we would wish to do that aren't being done because we are poorly funded. And whilst it's good that we've had a meeting with Lee Rowley about it, to be honest with you, for years we've been standing here and we hear about meetings at Downing Street, meetings with the Chancellor, meetings with this minister. If we got any kind of money from having these meetings, you know, we'd be the Manchester City of funded authorities. We'd be top of the league instead of being the Sheffield United at the bottom of the league for funding. So yes, it's you know, something that we've had a meeting, but we just aren't getting the results from those meetings that are seeing a practical improvement in the budget of the authority. And, you know, I've said it before, I'll say it again, you know, we met Rishi Sunak 5 years ago when he was a junior minister, and he was full of warm words about how he sympathised with Leicestershire's situation. He was going to help them, and obviously he became Chancellor in charge of the nation's finances and now Prime Minister in charge of everything as far as he can. But, you know, we still haven't been getting the funding that we need. So I'm afraid that, you know, we are still waiting for the fair funding. We have this deficit issue coming down the tracks, which is getting worse and worse and causing understandable huge concern. It really is time the government drop the warm words, drop the constant meetings and saying what people want to hear, and actually deliver the money that Leicestershire needs to ensure that we have the services that our county and residents need.
Thank you, Mr. Mullaney. Mr. Rushton.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll start off with Michael, or is it Mike, as his new leader, Sir Ed, calls him. Is it Michael or Mike or Miguel? Or we're not sure, but I'll respond to you anyway, Mike. So thank you for your positive comments generally on Bradgate, caseworker, EV charge points and appreciating the situation we are with RAC. On Devo, I think it's a bit of a cheat, really, criticising our government. I watched a programme where Ed the other week was talking about this new community planning you're going to have with no top-down targets. Then you scuttle off to your conference, wherever it was, and suddenly we're told that the new Liberal policy on housing is, your policy is now 380,000 houses per year, top-down. So you can't say one thing about our government and then you go to your conference and say we're going to have to build 380,000 houses. I say to people that live in Hinkley Bosworth that the Liberals have just given you a concrete council. You know, you're going to have, you moan about the housing you've got that you can't cope with. You lot are now going to double it. So it's disingenuous to say one thing and then go to your conference and do another. On the sorry about that, Stu, or is it Stuart? On the meeting of ministers, I've been leader 12 years. I've been meeting ministers constantly, annually, biannually, triannually, and unfortunately I'll just have to keep on doing it. I've met Liberal ministers when you were half in charge. I've met Labour up-and-coming people when they thought they were going to be in charge. If they do get to be in charge, I will meet Labour ministers. I will keep doing it to try and get an improvement in the core funding of Leicestershire, because no matter what we do with Devo, it does not help our core funding for adults and children. That's where we need to they need to address. And we may not be the Manchester City of the Premier League, but we're certainly not going to be relegated like Leicester City. We will continue to be high-performing, and as I've said, with the resources we've got, doing the best we can. So Amanda, thanks for your compliments again on trading standards. Great little department. We all appreciate the work they do, and certainly I do. Thanks for your compliments on Bredgate, core funding and the Levelling Up White Paper I've just addressed with Mike, or is it Michael? The finances are dire. They are definitely dire, and it's right of us to point that out. On the personal car park, I may own it, but I haven't got personal use of the entire car park. I do let out quite a lot of spaces to third parties. In fact, I let my son use it at no charge, although he has to buy me a pint once a week. Max, okay, MTFS is again the use of the word dire, which is good. Capital projects in highways, we have to disagree on that. I mean, I couldn't possibly consider saying I'm not going to attempt to build the Melton Mowbray bypass. You imagine the hoo-ha up there. And in your own area, most of your problems with your local plan, okay, it's difficult because it's a huge local plan. Most of the problems you've got there are highways and infrastructure based. So we just could not cut capital projects to fund adults and children. Betty, thank you. And thank you very much for going to Bow Manor Hall last Friday. I couldn't get, so I'm glad you stood in as Labour Group spokesman, and you did a good job. Thanks very much. Michael, level 3, we have a sitting group decision that if level 3 was available on this side of the chamber, the administration at present would accept a directly elected mayor. We'll have to wait and see, if I'm honest, what comes out of the Levelling Up White Paper, if it ever gets into government, and see what powers they potentially give to the so-called East Midlands Authority, D2N2, to see whether or not my group would again vote for the same way. It wasn't universally approved in the group. There's a lot of people on this side that don't like directly elected mayors. But when we see what they get, what the government are offering, if it's available, we will have another group meeting to consider it. But at the moment, the policy of this group is that we would accept a directly elected mayor. Phil, we're definitely not going to go 114. Hell will freeze over before this administration serves a 114 notice, because in all honesty, it doesn't solve anything. All they do is send in administrators and tell you to do things which, if we're sensible, we can do ourselves. There's no magic money tree they send in. So Birmingham's still in a mess, even though it's got commissioners. You know, it's still got to solve its equal pay problems. It's still got to solve its Oracle problems. They've not shoveled money at it. They've just put people in there that aren't elected. So whilst we're in charge, Phil, and we're capable of making the tough decisions, we will have to make them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call on Mrs Taylor, Lead Member for Children and Family Services.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'm just going to start with the family hubs. I'm proudly wearing my new family hubs lanyard, and I now have a badge as well to promote. So over the last 5 months, we've been pleased to share that we've opened 9 out of our 25 family hubs across Leicestershire. The opening events have welcomed parents, carers and members of the community into the hubs, and I know many members have been along the openings of the hubs in their areas as well. So we're sharing the range of services and support on offer. So the hubs on offer is wide and extensive, offering a one-shop stop to parents and carers for 0 to 19-year-olds and up to 25-year-olds for young people with special educational needs and disabilities. So these hubs, as I've advised before, are a mixture of physical and virtual spaces where people have access to a range of family advice, support services and guidance on issues such as social care, education, mental and physical health. I am really pleased as well to share with the Council that we're working with colleagues in library services to help extend the reach of the family house concept. So Leicestershire libraries have always been buildings that welcome children and families, and so are a natural partner in this programme. And this partnership is enabling us to create family hub areas in libraries with resources for families to borrow and use of public access computers to support with digital poverty agenda. And we're also getting lots of approaches from other community buildings and community groups within communities that are wanting to be trained with this programme. So we're hoping that this is going to spread and spread. We've had some really good media coverage, so it's getting really popular, and the DFE have shown a great interest in the work that we're doing with the Family Hubs money that they gave to us. I'm really pleased to announce that Leicestershire and Rutland Social Care Authorities and the Integrated Care Board has been selected in the East Midlands region to pilot a range of changes set out in the Special Educational Needs and Disability and Alternative Provision Improvement Plan. So the SEND AP Improvement Plan sets out the government's plan to change the SEND and AP system in England. So there are only 9 change programme partnerships across the country that will be piloting the resources and testing these reforms, and I'm really pleased that we are one of 9 of those areas, and though it's between LLR and the ICB, Leicestershire County Council will be leading on this programme. So the main areas of testing during the programme, running from this September to August 2025, are a set of national standards, developing the local area inclusion partnership, working with stakeholders to deliver a standardised digital educational health and care plan template with supporting processes and guidance, and improving information available to families and providing a tailored list of suitable settings informed by the local area inclusion plan. The partnership is also going to be working with schools and further education colleges to develop a 3-tier AP ladder of intervention and early language support for every child programme, which will be rolled out jointly through the NHS England and Department for Education Resources to support speech and therapy. I know we're obviously working with Newton Europe, our consultants, looking at the SEND, so this programme will dovetail really nicely into this, and I'm really grateful for my support cabinet member Craig, who travelled to London to the DFE for the launch of this on my behalf because I couldn't get there. I had other meetings in the diary, so he'll be able to tell you a little bit more about that launch there, so we're really pleased that we're doing that. Unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, so we continue to support children and young people who arrive in Leicestershire as unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. Over the last year, the department has seen a significant rise in children arrived unaccompanied both through the National Transfer Scheme and through spontaneous arrivals in the county, and we're responsible for assessing those accompanied asylum-seeking children needs and arranging suitable placements for them. And I think the last count is that we've had 65 children that have come out of dispersal hotels that then become our immediate responsibility as well. So there's a huge amount that we're doing with unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, and we are fully committed to supporting these children who arrive in the country unaccompanied that have been through great trauma. However, the increase in numbers arriving is placing significant pressure on the department's budget and on our staffing. We have real problems with getting staff in to support us with this. Just a couple of nice pieces to finish. So I wanted to share a lovely book that's been written by a 9-year-old, Amaya. Amaya has autism and is very passionate about the planet. So in April this year, she decided to write a book called The Adventures of Boo, Save the Sea Animals, which has been published and is available for people to buy. Amaya says, I'm really proud of this, and if it educates one person, then I've achieved something, and to this date she has sold 50 books. Amaya is looking to write more books in the future, and we have one of these books in our department if anyone wants to come and have a read of it. And both myself and the director sent a certificate to Amaya to thank her for the book, and she asked us which was our favourite animal out of the book, so we've sent that to her as well. And I just want to thank Gary and Nicola from Trading Services Standards for joining me for lunch today. They had plenty of stories to tell me about their adventures during their very long careers in Trading Standards. Probably not a lot that I can share here, but it was a very enjoyable lunch, and I think I know a lot more about Trading Standards and the changes through the last 30 years than I ever had. So I thank them for joining me for lunch today. And that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. As before, I've asked people to raise your hands and then call, and I will then call you to speak. After that, if Mrs. Hack and Mr. Mullaney wish to speak, I'll call them after the lead member's right, before the lead member's right to reply. So at the moment, I've got Mrs. Posnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to speak very briefly about the Family Hub in Melton. It has been really welcomed by the local residents and it is well used. And it was heartening to see the other day when somebody, a new resident to Melton, who's got a small baby, was asking where she could go, were there any exercise classes or anything where she could go with her baby, because she doesn't come from Melton and she knew anybody. And the responses she got to that, every one of them mentioned the Family Hub in Melton and how valued the service was. So thank you very much for that. It's been well used.
Thank you, Mrs. Posnett. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was pleased to attend the Change and Improvement Plan launch down in London last week on behalf of Mrs. Taylor. The plan sets out some bold and ambitious goals with a new approach to SEND and alternative provision, with focus on children and preparing them into mainstream education or preparing them for adulthood. The change is much needed, and I look forward to working within the department to help deliver that change, meeting the children's needs earlier to prevent further and more costly escalation. And just echoing Mrs. Posnett's points on the Children's Family Hubs, I was at the Colville Centre yesterday, and it's been really, really well received since its launch. It was the first one to be launched as well, and they're just so welcoming to everybody as well. So very well done to everybody involved in Children's Family Hubs. Thank you.
That's very good. Thank you very much. I've got no one else who's asked to speak. So, Mrs. Hack, have you got anything? Yep, Mrs. Hack then, please.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, I've lost my place. Excuse me. I was really pleased to be able to attend the opening of the Family Hub in Braunston, although it's in our Children's Centre building, so it felt like a little bit going home, having used that facility for both of mine when they were small. It's really great to see these services, particularly the one in Braunston, as it's in the site of a secondary school. It's a well-used facility for family activities anyway, with lots going on that site. It's encouraging that the government have decided to choose Leicestershire and Rutland for its SEND improvement, for alternative provision improvement plan. I think all of those who've been involved in looking through the pressure that SEND has been under in Leicestershire, whether it's via transport or via the decision-making process, will know that SEND has been, the ability to provide children with the appropriate educational place has been really tricky. It's been something we found difficult. So if this will improve things, I'm really happy to see that. It'd be useful to understand a little bit more whether or not that comes with funding, how that will be supported financially. That would be really helpful. Again, looking at the unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, is what support comes from national government to support us with those increasing budgets. If Deborah could give us a little update on that, that would be great. And it's so lovely to see the storybook that Amaya has written. Good for her. I'm really pleased that we've mentioned her today in council. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Hack. Mr. Mullaney, you want to say anything? Yeah, fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So also I add my congratulations to Amaya on writing her book and wish her luck in writing many more in the future. In terms of family hubs, I visited the launch of the Hinckley hub and appreciate all the work that the staff have been doing on that. In terms of SEND, any SEND support is welcome. However, there are still huge, serious concerns with SEND provision in the county, and many parents who are still very concerned about the overall provision of SEND in a whole range of areas. So really is something that really does need improving on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney. Mrs. Taylor.
Thank you. Thank you for Pam. I'm really pleased that that word is getting out there. That's what we've been working really hard over the last few months, is to get that word out there, that the family hubs are available and they're the place to go, that one-stop shop. So it's really encouraging to hear that that's actually happening in the community. So I thank Pam for that. Craig, yeah, we are really excited to be working on these reforms and what we can do to support the children for SEND. We know that's an issue for this council, as is for many local authorities, and we want to do the best we can to support children with SEND. So we are really excited to be embarking on this journey. Same for Amanda, the family hubs. Yeah, we're really pleased that you like the family hub and it's being well used. So that's really good and encouraging to hear that word is spreading in that area as well. The SEND and AP, yes, it does come with funding. We don't know what it is yet, but it will come with funding. It's really early days. It's only just been launched last week. So we're just starting to work through what it will, but it does come with funding for us to be able to do those reforms. So that's really good news for us. I didn't quite catch your question on asylum seekers, so if you want to email me, I can give you that information that you're asking for. And again, Mike, your family hub support, yeah, it was good to see you at the Hinckley opening as well. And yeah, positive support for the SEND AP reforms. As soon as I get some more information about what these reforms are going to be and what we'll be trialling and the funding that we get, obviously we will share that with council as soon as we got there, but it's really early days for us, so we need to get our head around it first and hear from the DFE what those plans are, but I will share those as soon as I can.
Thank you, Mrs. Taylor. We now move to the statement from the lead member for health, Mrs. Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. And firstly, apologies to members that this didn't go out with the agenda, but I did feel it was really important to highlight some of these things to full council. Firstly, homelessness. As you know, we went out to consultation about our proposed new model of support to help improve the health of those who are homeless or at risk of homelessness, and that's now completed, and we're analysing those responses. That will go for consideration at the Health and Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 1st of November before going to Cabinet with the final proposal for approval. Members will also be aware of a large amount of publicity and lobbying by the current provider about the existing model. I've stayed out of getting into an exchange of words with the current provider on their funding and on the benefit system that Charnwood Borough Council has. But I would like to ask members that to focus on what the proposal is about. It's about how we support improved health in a part of a population that experiences poorer health. So I would urge members to view the scrutiny coverage of the homelessness item at the Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 13th of September, and then consider it yourselves, please. Many thanks. On COVID, we're approaching that time of year, winter period, where we have a lot of colds and flu. COVID might not be the same threat as it was before, but it still sits alongside the other respiratory issues we have. We don't know whether the new variant leads to more serious illness, but the NHS has wisely brought forward the vaccination campaign just to combat any threat over the winter. So I would ask members that if you are eligible for flu and COVID jabs, that's over 65s and certain vulnerable groups, please do go and get them. Thank you. We've also seen a recent CQC report on maternity services at the University Hospital of Leicester. You'll have seen it in the press. It's been rated as requires improvement with concerns about staffing levels. Whilst recognising the pressure the NHS does have, we do look forward to seeing what benefits arise from the Integrated Care Board. Now it's been running for a year. However, I have seen in certain articles in the press that there could possibly be further changes in NHS structures. So I am urging NHS colleagues to not be distracted by that and to work together locally in the interests of all our patients and residents. And the good bit, smoking cessation. You should be encouraged to hear that the adult smoking rate in Leicestershire has fallen to single figures for the first time ever. It was 11.5 in July. It's now lower than any other East Midland authorities, and it says in the statement that it's bar Rutland. We now are 9.4 and Rutland's 9.5, so we are the lowest. And we're also bucking the trend, actually, because other areas are having a very slow decrease or even an increase. So I'm very proud of the smoking cessation team. They do a really good work and very impressive work, and it has high, far-reaching benefits, long-term benefits for our population in Leicestershire. So I'm very proud of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Mr. Hunt first.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to add a note of appreciation to the work that Mrs. Richardson's doing in that department, and particularly on homelessness, because she was kind enough to come along to the Falcon Centre to talk to the volunteers there about the situation they find themselves in. It is actually a county-wide service and not simply a Charnwood service, and I think that's important to note. I hope she hasn't received any unseemly exchange of words from anybody on our side. But, that's good. But it is a mention here, and I was a little bit nervous that it might be me. Oh, and finally, just to say that on the Falcon Centre, it is typical of Robert Sharp. Some of you who, I think most of you remember Robert Sharp. He was an excellent councillor, but he is a director of volunteer director of Falcon Centre, and every Christmas we get something from him to say this is where you need to send your money for charity. I'll just add that Robert's been very ill of late, and those who know him, he's coping. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Mrs. Duke.
It's just a quick one on COVID injections. I went a few days ago to sort of make an appointment with my local chemist, who's really good. And I also spoke to the doctor's surgery, and I have a little bit of concern insofar as I feel that the approach is not as robust as it was last year in terms of encouraging people to come forward for their COVID injections. And I don't know whether we as councillors could do more, perhaps out in our patch, to say to people, you know, you must come forward to get your injections if you're the right age group and you have a certain criteria that says that you need a COVID injection. But as I say, in talking to my local chemist, I thought it was quite laid back, and that did give me a bit of concern. Thank you.
Mr. Rushton.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I thank Louise for the work she does in this area, especially dealing with the so-called Integrated Care Board, which, as far as I can see, all it's done is employ loads and loads of staff at vast expense to us. I mean, it is really difficult dealing with them. I mean, the latest idea of wanting to amalgamate us with Northamptonshire, in my view, is a non-starter. I've not heard anybody wanting to amalgamate with Northamptonshire. But Louise does a really good job in there. It is really, sometimes when she speaks to me about it, I type of glaze over. There's so many different departments, so many people doing so many things, and yet, you know, all we want to see are nurses and doctors looking after us. The administration of the health service is absolutely beyond belief, but I thank her for the work she does. I can reassure her that I'm getting my flu jab on Friday and I'm getting my COVID jab on Saturday. But I do agree with Betty that the incentive isn't as robust as it used to be, and there are a lot of COVID deniers, conspiracy theorists, not mentioning any members of Parliament in particular, but that hasn't helped people make informed decisions. And I believe the health practitioners And I will have a flu jab on Friday, I will have a COVID jab on Saturday, and I won't believe the conspiracy theorists that say I'll be dead by Sunday.
Quite right too. I mean, I think most of you know I was part of the clinical trials for the AstraZeneca right when it started, so I've had loads from that side. I've just signed up again this year for another clinical trial, this time from Moderna in order to Moderna to look at. They're looking at a potential vaccine which will cover, they say, all future COVID variants as well. Now, of course, I may not have had that. I may have had the blind study thing, but nevertheless, I think I've now had 8. I'm now actually booked in at 8:58 on Saturday for my next flu jab and COVID jab, so one in each arm, which is what I did last time. Yeah, I mean, people don't realise it because it's not so much in the headlines, but we have, you know, still thousands of people at the moment in hospital with COVID. And it's just because it's not in the headlines, we do need to tell people. If you offer the jab, go for it, for goodness sake. And I just had a text through and it told me to do something and I did it. There it was. Mrs. Hack, do you want to speak? Sorry, since then, we've had 2 more appear. Mr. Bannister.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Louise, for bringing to Council the very good news about the adult smoking rate in the county, and I appreciate we can't be complacent about such good news, and more work will need to be carried on in order to sustain those figures. But we have heard, I think, last night on the news about the very real concerns regarding the habit of vaping, particularly amongst young children. And I just wondered, Louise, if you might be able to update Council about the work we're doing to address that particular health issue, ready for our next Council meeting. Thank you, Chairman.
And Mr. Beer.
Cheers, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My second point was going to be around vaping, and I think Mr. Bannister has raised that one, so I won't reiterate it, but it is a concern to me. I have a 13-year-old and I drop him off at school some mornings, and I'd be astonished with what I see with the number of children vaping. But I'll leave that there, and I hope you will get response back. But I just wanted to touch on the Falcon Centre and the homelessness. And with my county hat on, I understand we need to make savings. And I understand that we have to look at the whole county when we're delivering our service. But I do believe that after visiting the Falcon Centre and seeing the sterling work that they do, that it's a valuable resource. It needs more support financially than we're able to give it as a county. But I think if we lose it, then either that funding will have to come from elsewhere, or alternatively the centre will fold, and then people who need that support either don't get it or will access it elsewhere. So yes, I understand it's going to come to scrutiny. Urge members to have a look at it, but I also ask the administration to have an open mind on this, because it is a valuable service. Yes, we could save, but it might cost further down the line in different resources. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I've got no other arms raised, none. So it's Mrs. Hack.
Thank you, Kevin, and congratulations for probably being the most jabbed person in the room today. Yeah, I mean, clearly the massive important not only to be vaccinated with COVID, but with flu vaccine. I know, having looked at the numbers in health in particular, we're seeing vaccination levels of all kinds of vaccinations drop. So anything we can do at health scrutiny, and with the work you're doing, Louise, on vaccinations in particular, I think would be really, really important. So thank you for that. What I wanted to speak about, though, is the concern that may well be facing people who are currently pregnant, and the worries that they may well have over maternity services. Glad that Louise has raised this on the agenda today. I think it was a really important message to put across. As a previous member of Health Scrutiny, maternity services have been scrutinised a couple of times in recent years, and certainly anything that we can do to help improve the services in maternity will be welcome by all of our residents affected by that. And again, I was just going to raise the worry around increase of vaping. Certainly, it was not just on the news yesterday, I think it's been on the news quite recently, particularly around the vaping companies selling bubblegum flavour and flavours that are really, you know, I think if we're all being honest, are marketed at teenagers. They're not marketed at adults trying to stop smoking. So if we could have a future report on the impact and the increase of vapes, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hack. Mr. Mullaney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in terms of homelessness, I mean, in terms of the health aspects, it can have a huge negative effect on people to be long-term homeless in terms of life expectancy and so on. So everything we can do to help deal with the problem, we must do. And so, you know, this is a very difficult issue in terms of this particular situation, but hopefully the County Council can work to get a positive outcome on this. And if that does mean perhaps changing some ground if necessary, then maybe that does need to happen. COVID certainly remains a concern with cases still being quite high, so certainly we'd encourage everybody to take the vaccine if they're offered it. In terms of smoking, I welcome the fall in smoking rates in Leicestershire. I've worked with Cancer Research UK as one of their cancer champions in terms of working with them on this issue. So I'm glad to see rates are falling, though I agree with the concerns that other members have raised about vaping. In terms of the maternity services, it is concerning that it was the lack of levels of staffing was raised as a problem there. There are huge pressures, as we know, on the National Health Service in terms of the 7.7 million on the waiting lists and all the other pressures that are on our NHS at the moment. So we really do need to see improvements to health services, both in Leicester and across the country as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mullaney. Mrs. Richardson.
Firstly, thank you for your kind words. It's very welcome. Regarding the COVID vaccinations, the NHS are spending a lot less on promoting the vaccinations, but we are doing everything we can to push the message out and sharing comms, etc. Regarding the ICB, you know, it is a challenge. There's lots of issues to work through, governance arrangements, all sorts of things. Part of my issue about not getting distracted by structures, new changes in structures, was highlighting the fact that ICB should be concentrating at present on our local area and our local needs. Vaping, we have a paper coming to DMT very shortly. We have been doing some work in schools. There's a big role for trading standards, and I have spoken to trading standards about enforcing, you know, vapes being sold out of the backs of vans, etc., to school children. It's not acceptable. We're also looking at safeguarding within vaping, the potential use of vapes in grooming, etc. And we also have to be careful how we do this, because we also use vaping as a way of smoking cessation in adults. So there is a lot of work to do through that. So I'm looking forward to that paper coming forward. Regarding the Falcon Centre, Joel, there are things that could be done there, such as social landlord. Charnwood Borough Council, there is an issue with the benefits that they receive, and that is one of the things Falcon have flagged to us, so whether you are able as leader to do anything about that. But these are areas we're not actually responsible for the Falcon Centre, and that's why I urge members to actually look at the proposal and go back to the HOSC meeting and then make your decision, please. And I think I've covered everybody's questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Richardson. And then the lead member for Community and Staff Relations, which is Pam Posnett. Your statement.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm delighted to introduce the 2023 Communities Annual Report. The report highlights the work with Leicestershire communities has been carried out within my portfolio over the past financial year. It celebrates and showcases some great initiatives and the success of locally led responses and action. This work and that of the County Council as a whole is guided by the framework of the Council's community strategy, our community approach. The approach was adopted by the County Council in May 2022, and since then there's been good progress across all departments, led by the Corporate Communities Board, in embedding the core principles of prevention, participation and supporting voluntary sector catalysts. We have a lot to be proud of in Leicestershire, and the annual report brings to the forefront some of the very many ways in which the Council is collaborating with communities to promote asset-based approaches and social action, where people come together to support each other, building on the strengths of people, places and local institutions. This approach is well illustrated in our support for the community response to ongoing cost of living pressures, close working with town and parish councils, neighbourhood planning groups and the Leicestershire Rural Partnership, and wide engagement on equalities issues. There are many other inspiring examples of our work within the report, and I would urge members to consider how we can link with and further support local action in our role as community leaders and champions. I actually went to a community support network which is arranged recently at the Salvation Army headquarters in Leicester. And there were about a dozen different stalls there with volunteers who were doing things within the community. And quite a few of those had been able to get established with the help from the County Council. So it was a really interesting meeting to go to. The annual report is available on the Leicestershire Communities website and on the elected members portal. So if you've got a few moments, it would be nice to think that you were going to have a look at it. And lastly, I just want to give, because broadband's also in my portfolio, a quick roundup of where we are with Digital Leicestershire. The Digital Leicestershire team at the County Council is secured from funding from the Building Digital UK, BDUK, or this is abbreviation, for a project to install full fibre broadband infrastructure to 43 public sector sites, mainly schools, of which there are 30, in Leicestershire. Project GigaHub has connected its first 4 sites, Fleckney, Desford and Lutterworth Libraries and Balston Church of England Primary School and Community Centre, with a further 11 estimated for completion by the end of September 2023. And this will then complete tranche 1. The remainder of the sites will be implemented before the end of March 2024. Leicestershire premises are included in 7 different lots for Project Gigabit. Project Gigabit is the UK government's £5 billion national programme that aims to accelerate gigabit broadband rollout across the UK. Project Gigabit is helping to achieve the government's aim of 85% gigabit coverage nationwide by 2025 and at least 99% by 2030. Lot 11, and we are working with Warwickshire for these, has the most premises in Leicestershire with approximately 24,000, and delivery is expected to start on this from the summer of 2024. The digital team has also been working with Openreach to encourage a number of fibre community partnerships to the east of the county. Rotherby, Scorford, Rearsby and Waltham were target areas, and Openreach will be starting to build soon in these areas. Openreach continues to work with Somerby, Wymondham and Nipton to encourage uptake. The Digital Leicestershire website has been updated and includes a map that shows all the GigaHub sites and details of when they will go live. The digital team is undertaking a mapping exercise to understand further the digital coverage in Leicestershire. This will help us identify gaps and continue to support those hard-to-reach areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Posnett. I've had no hands raised, so Mrs. Hack, do you want to say anything? No. Mr. Mullaney? We move on to agenda item number 6, the notice of a motion, which is headed Ivanhoe Line. So with the consent of council, Mr. Bill will move and Mr. Mullaney will second the altered motion in your paperwork, I hope to see. I won't read it because I'm sure Mr. Bill will no doubt mention most of it. So Mr. Bill.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And I move the new improved motion, which is in front of you this afternoon. This talks about the wish on the part of many of us, I think, to see the Ivanhoe Line extended into Leicester. I think that none of us would really think that a truncated railway system could possibly be conceived anywhere in this country. So there we are. 40 years ago, Mr. Chairman, this County Council, alongside Derbyshire and Staffordshire County Council, set about promoting a scheme to restore the railway line between Leicester, Burton and Derby. In fact, it set up a working party, and I believe I am the last standing person who was a member of that working party, officer or member. We had a splendid time of it, really. I remember once we set up on a special train. We left Leicester and we got as far as Kirby Muxloe, where the first station was due to be. And we got off the train and we met a delegation from the local old people's home. And we said, don't you want to see the station restored here? And we were chased off the premises with pots and pans. And so we moved on. Further along the line, we got to Burton, then we came along to Willington. In Willington, we were met with Edwina Curry. And my abiding memory of that is Edwina Curry trying to shake hands with the driver of a passing freight train. I asked her to step back, but anyway, there we go. So that was the beginning of it. Then 10 years, everything took forever. Everything took forever. We produced plans. We produced all kinds of detailed work. We were looking at the livery of the upholstery in the trains. We were looking at logos. We were looking at everything. And somewhere in the annals of this building, you will find the plans that were put together all those years ago. They were the whole track diagrams, the plans for the stations, the details of the trains are all there, and somewhere in this building they still must exist. We got as far as 10 years later, we got as far as 1993, and we produced a prospectus. And the prospectus set out in pretty clear terms the proposal, and this was for a line to start in Loughborough and come down as far as Leicester, and the intermediary stations coming south, Barrow-on-Soar, Sileby and Syston. And that part of the scheme was actually opened, and it's there to this day. But it wasn't going to stop in Leicester, it was going to go all the way to Burton-on-Trent, and then over to Derby. But various events intervened, which I don't think we need to go into now. The costs rose really, which were laid on by British Rail at the time. You wouldn't expect a scheme to have additional costs associated with it, would you? But there we are. And then we had privatisation, which brought in further challenges, and the scheme was shelved. But what I'm delighted to be able to report, which I've seen just recently, really, is the success of the campaign for the restoration of the Ivanhoe Line, Krill, who've come back onto the scene and have tackled the challenges head on. They've made use of the, what is it called, the Restore Your Railways Fund. They've looked at the minimum viable product, whatever it's called. All kinds of new concepts have now come into play, and I think they're working well. And I very much hope that at some point the local authorities, including our own, can work alongside this campaign and can now bring what is a concept which has reached quite a useful stage into fruition and bring about the 40-year-old dream that I've always had, that we will actually get there someday. In fact, it's really taken the span of my time on this authority, really, hasn't it? All those years. And I'm sure I haven't got there, but I hope one day we'll actually see those passenger trains restored. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mullaney, who was seconding.
Can I second and reserve my remarks?
Very much. Sorry. Mr. Rushton.
Madam Chairman, thank you very much. Can I thank the father of the house, because I think he most definitely is, for his motion on railways. What a surprise. Can I thank Dave, or is it David? Seconded by Mike, or is it Michael, for this motion. And we will be voting in favour of it, Dave. We think it's a good motion, and we're always willing to support motions which I think are for the benefit of us all. So we will be supporting you, Dave. Don't forget, David, we did put money into this. We have always supported it. It's always been our principle that we definitely support it, but we could never afford to do it. We have put odds and sods in of money. We put 8,000 in. Some of the districts put some money in. Some refused to put some money in. But that's up to them. But the principle of us supporting the principle of the railway is sound, and it would be useful to have it. North West Leicestershire is the only constituency in the country without any rail access whatsoever. So whilst it's disappointing, if I'm honest, to see that the only place we'll be able to go is Burton-on-Trent through the National Forest line onto Derby, which I never go to anyway, it is better than what was on offer before. But I'm happy to support this, because ideally it would be better for me if it came in to Leicester. Now, the problem when it gets to Leicester, when it comes up past the city ground, is that they built all over where the track, you know, David, you know more about railways than I do, but they built all over where the track goes into the Leicester station. And even if it was there, it has to go up past the station, as you know, David, because on the curve, and reverse back on the main line. Now, as you know, Leicester Station's only quite small, really, and I'm told by the railway people there's no capacity to accommodate what in their minds a little shunter train pulling up every hour onto the station. So apart from that, you know, the logistical stuff, it is difficult to get it in there. I mean, it could finish at the city ground. I'd certainly use it to go and see Leicester City. I'll never use it to go and see Derby because I think they're rubbish. But I'd certainly use it with my season ticket to go to Leicester City, but I would definitely not go to Derby. I might go to Burton, but I can't think of any good reason to go to Burton. There's nothing there at all. There's a brewery, that's owned by the Americans. And in all honesty, I can't think of anybody will be getting on the train from Derby to go to Colville. Now, I like Colville, but if I live in Derby, why am I wanting to jump on a train and go to Colville via Burton and via the National Forest? I might go to the National Forest, but I can certainly see a lot of people say if it went from Derby to Leicester, they would use it. What they're doing is they're taking away a lot of the potential customers to save money. So I'll certainly be happy to support your motion, David. I thank you for probably your 1,000th motion on railways, and let's hope we do some good. Thank you.
Mr. O'Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, David. You always have been an ambassador to the railways, and proud to say that, because you know there's not many people out there like you that actually do take a pride in the railways. But let me just say to you, LCC has a strong track record, pardon the pun, of supporting the restoration of the Ivanhoe line from Burton to Leicester. And as a group, we want to support it. We commissioned work that was reported, as you know, in 2015, at that time to reopen the Leicester to Burton stretch to passenger services. However, that would have cost between 100 and 170 million capital to upgrade the line. The cost of that was being prohibitive due to the amount of trains that we would need to use. If the fund, it was funds from the government's £500 million Restore Your Railway Fund that allowed the partial restoration of the funding for the new stations and the line to Ashby and Colville and onwards to Derby. This should be celebrated locally as a positive outcome, and whilst we continue to want to see the full restoration of the line to Leicester, we will support this motion, and it would be great for the people of both Leicester and Derby and everyone along the track to have a train that runs on time.
Thanks, Mr O'Shea. Mrs Hagg.
That was a really interesting trip down memory lane from David there, so thank you so much for that. Yeah, no, it's been really... Yeah, he's definitely Mr Railways, isn't he? I think, you know, the Labour group will be supporting this motion, and obviously the opening of the Ivanhoe line in full has to be the long-term strategic objective for Leicestershire, and therefore needs to be supported by this council. The decision to consider the line from Burton to Colville only at this stage, though, should be seen as a positive step, and we want to see that delivered, but it has to be part of a longer-term project to open the line in full. I met with Krill during the pandemic, and they've worked tireless in this pursuit of this goal, and I think thanks must be given to Krill and the council partners, as well as volunteer and campaigners who've been working tirelessly to fight for this line. The business case goes forward next year, so of course that is to be welcomed. Delivering full, we know, will have long-term benefits for Leicestershire, which includes my own division, which is so close to the line, along the back of Manil's, Gores, Park and Ride, opening opportunities for businesses, commuters and those who want to travel for leisure into Leicester and beyond. The Ivanhoe line for passengers will help to also mitigate the impact of all the new developments that we've got along this corridor, so the Labour Group will be in support. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Very unusual. I'll take exception to my leader's comments that certainly those of us in Forest and Measham actually look north rather than south. So I fully support the motion and hope that it will go through to Leicester, but I wouldn't want us to take our eye off the ball and lose that link up to Derbyshire. I used to work in Burton, so I certainly would have used it, and I go to London, and it would be much easier to jump on the train and get the train from Derby rather than going over to East Midlands Parkway. Also, a lot of my constituency work in Burton, work at Burniston at the Toyota factory, also work at Rolls-Royce. And I think the leader and deputy leader of North West Leicestershire District Council would take exception to your comments about Derby County, although as a Middlesbrough supporter, we'll probably be joining them down in League 2 shortly. But I support the motion, but I hope we don't take our eye off the ball for going north.
Thanks very much. Mr Smith.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. So I'm a huge advocate of the reopening of the Ivanhoe passenger line, and I commend the Council's continuing support that it had over the years. Representing one of the only towns in Leicestershire without a rail passenger link, it would be fantastic to see such towns as Colville and Ashby reconnected to the national railway network, either from Derby or from Burton, for the first time since the early 60s, way before I was born. So, however, like Mr Bill too, I'm very disappointed that at present we're not going all the way to Leicester. Hopefully, once the business plan is sorted and we can prove that it is a workable, feasible asset, then that will change in the near future, even if it just alleviates some of the parking problems at Mr Rushton's house as well. So I do hope they reconsider the motion. I fully support it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Smith. Mr King.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Look, I support this, and what I wanted to say was I welcome everyone's enthusiasm for improving rail, obviously in North West Leicestershire, which is obviously, and I do understand that, but what I do think this is missing is that, and someone mentioned it earlier, This should be about a longer term plan for rail across not just North West Leicestershire, but the whole of Leicestershire. And in my division, over the last year or two, there have been a growing number of voices for looking at improvements between Market Harbour and Northampton. I understand that there was a feasibility study carried out by Network Rail in 2020, unbeknown to quite a lot of people, and I hope Mr Bill and other enthusiasts for rail improvements would be interested in finding out and supporting that in the future. Thank you.
I did actually discuss what we were having this motion today at lunch table with the Lord Mayor of Leicester. I suspect the getting the City Council to agree to this motion might be tricky, because it would go along the back of her garden, she was saying. But I'm sure that's a separate battle for you. Mr Mullaney.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and thank you to everyone who has commented and supported the motion. Thank you to David for bringing forward the excellent motion, to Mrs Hack, Mr Ashman, Mr King, Mr Smith, Mr Rushton and Mr O'Shea for all speaking in support of it. If we are going to get people away from cars and onto public transport in terms of helping to deal with climate change, then we do need to improve the public transport options that are available, whether that's existing lines like the Midland Main Line that we're waiting for the electrification of, whether it's keeping those ticket offices in places like Hinckley and elsewhere that provide service to residents, or whether it's restoring services like the Ivanhoe line. So I'm very happy to second this motion. Thank you to everyone who's spoke in support of it, and I hope it will make an impact. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Reply.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. And can I thank everybody for their kind words on this? Can I respond to Phil's point? I'm very much in support of the Northampton Market Harbour. In fact, I ventured onto your patch a few weeks ago when I spoke in support of that. I know there's a meeting taking place in Northampton on Saturday, and I've been asked to go to that, so I suppose I better turn up to. I mean, it's very much a harbour thing, so with Simon and Phil there, I would hope perhaps you're working together on that one. But on the point about Leicester, yes, it could it could go as far as Leicester South and stop somewhere near the stadium. But there is a serious point here, and that is that with Midland Main Line electrification now taking more of an important role, with HS2 being pushed to one side, and with the freight trains that we've been promised or threatened with coming from Felixstowe to Hinckley, and with the additional Nottingham, Leicester, Coventry service, which is going to be introduced on a half-hourly basis if Midlands Connect have their way, there's going to be tremendous pressure in Leicester anyway. So something must now happen to, I would have thought, reinstate those slow lines through Leicester, because it won't. It's a pinch point now. So I know this will add to the pinch point, but I would hope that I would hope that with all the pressure coming along, that something will now be done at Leicester to improve its capacity. Thank you, Chairman.
Bill. Yeah, I've also reminded of that as well, that because we've currently, as Mr King knows, we have the electrification coming up from Harborough through to South Wixton at the moment. And I have not seen any plans for how they get from South Wixton further north. How do they start electrifying through the middle of Leicester with all the other, what you just talked about? I mean, it means bridges being removed, bridges being replaced. There you go. That's not my problem. Anyway, now take a vote on the motion. Raise your arm, please, if you're in favour of the motion. Yeah? Looks like that's unanimous. Well done. I shan't ask any against. Now that's 25 minutes early. We will see you all in December. Thank you very much.